Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the fifth chapter of the first epistle of John. And we're going to review part of the fourth chapter, the part that opens up with a word of caution to judge or prove the spirits because there are heretics and deceivers and false prophets among them. The nature of their heresy was Gnosticism. We'll get on that more when we begin to touch up on the sixth verse of the chapter we're going to cover today. And then it just talks about being overcomers of the world, and that's one of the things we have to do as Christians. But the 7th through 21st verse is the most densely concentrated expressions of love. So next to 1 Corinthians 13, which has become the standard wedding love ballad, although the love described therein is not the love between that a man and a woman can know, but it is the agape love, the divine love that's so profound that the Greeks actually had to invent a term to describe it. And John speaks of agape love here, which is on an altogether different degree and dimension than love as we know it. Verse 7, Beloved ones, let us love one another, because love is of Elohim, and everyone who loves has been born of Elohim and knows Yahweh. Born of Elohim, that concept, that phrase is going to repeat itself in the first verse of the chapter we're going to cover today. This is our identity of adoption and belonging to the family of heaven. We have the faithful fellowship that awaits us in heaven when in proximity and exposure to the one who is love. Love is of Elohim, and love is Elohim, as he says in the Yahweh is love, he says in the next verse. The one who does not love does not know Yahweh, for Yahweh is love. If Yahweh is love, and now love is not Yahweh, because love is not the whole of Yahweh, but Yahweh is the whole of love. He is the all-encompassing attribute of his. So when we speak of attributes, that is something distinct from a characteristic. It is something that can be attributed to him. So he is love. He is the source of all love. Ergo, if anyone is not loving anyone at any time, the knowledge of Yahweh is absent in them and not working in them. By this the love of Yahweh was manifested in us. Yahweh has sent his only begotten Son into the world in order that we might live through him. So the supreme act of love was the life that he speaks of is life eternal, which was made possible through the incarnation. His entire reason for the entrance of the world was he loved perfectly while he walked the earth. He loved us even before he knew us. Love originates and emanates from him. We're eventually going to reach. But the supreme expression of love was the gift of the Son. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son at tremendous personal price, because he watched and witnessed his Son pay the price on the cross, and then he abandoned him in that moment when he became sin. But just the fact that he would go to those lengths. Love is more than a biblical doctrine. It is also a proof that was demonstrated on Calvary. Greater love hath no man than this, and he should lay down his life for his friends. We read in John 15:13. But who did he lay his life down for? Romans 5, he laid down his life for the wicked, the sinners, and his enemies. So he loved his enemies, and he proved it by going all the way to the cross. So it's easy for us to love our friends, but so too do sinners and publicans. So what reward have we? Verse 11, Beloved ones, if Yahweh so loved us, we shall also ought to love one another. John is known as the apostle of love. He self-identifies himself as the beloved disciple, and he identifies his audience as beloved to him. So he loved because he was loved. He had a special and unique. He loved. The love that he shared for Yahshua was exceedingly greater than any other disciple. So he is the expert and authority on the nature of love, and he just references the fact that because he loved us, the righteous reciprocal reaction would be for us to love others and to love him, of course. So the challenge, I do not struggle with loving my God. My God is awesome for several of the reasons I just discussed and many others. But I do struggle to love my fellow man as myself. I love my friends. I love my families. I don't struggle with love in that dimension, but to love those who hate you and want to do you harm. That is the difficulty and the challenge. Nevertheless, that is the love that we are called to, and we bear witness and give proof of his existence when we love, as we read of in the next verse. No one has seen Yahweh at any times. If we love one another, Yahweh stays in us, or his love has been perfected in us. He is an invisible entity, and as such, he can only be approached by faith. We have to have faith in the invisible, and it's a stretch for a lot of the world, but one of the ways that we can prove that he is real in the way that we love each other and just everyone around us, because Yahweh is love, and the concept of union or abiding, John is also an expert on that. He says much about it both in the gospel and this epistle, but he speaks of love being perfected, and that's going to come over in the 17th and 18th verse. Verse 15, whoever confesses that Yahshua is the Son of Yahweh, Elohim stays with him, and he in Elohim. So the confession is central to the part to abiding. We have to say out loud occasionally when it demands out loud in our prayers, and just acknowledge these things in public to friends and family and even enemies and aliens and strangers. That is what we are called to, and he will abide in us when he's as literally as close as the mention of his name. And we have known and believed the love that Yahweh has for us. Yahweh is love, and he who stays in love stays in Elohim, and Elohim in his. Because he is love, and if you if you are abiding in him, and you are abiding in him who is love, then you are going to love, and you're going to have him in you, and your ability and capacity to love beyond itself will break past these natural barriers. I would love to say that I love my enemies with as much as I love my friends, but I'm just not there yet. But, as long as he's abiding in us and we are exuding his love and reflecting the love that he radiates and intrinsically is, then we have the union in him, and we find it also in communion. So the Christian life is not meant to be, nor indeed should it be or can it be, a solitary experience. There's a communal dimension. So we are not lone creatures walking the earth with our Creator who we can't see. We also have people we have to interact with and witness to. By this love has been perfected with us, in order that we might have boldness in the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world. So if our love has been perfected, now he loves perfectly, we can only love imperfectly. That's not because we're horrible, horrible people. It just means that we are people. We are finite people, morally flawed, but we still do aspire to love, and that love the proof of this love is that we can not look to death with dread. We can look at it with boldness and just look it square in the eye and say, welcome, I long to be with my Savior. Take me now. To live is gain, to die is gain, but to live is Messiah, is Paul's standard. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear holds punishment, but he who fears has not been made perfect in love. Fear and love are oil and water mixtures. These are black and white, odds and ends of opposite ends of extremes. No more than any man can serve two masters can fear and love simultaneously inhabit the same vessel. So that's just, if you are fearful, you will not love. If you are loving, you will not fear. So fear is the antidote and the cure and the panacea to fear. And we have to live life fearlessly. We don't want to be dominated by fear or dread or anxiety of what's going to happen to us tomorrow or what awaits us in the afterlife. We want to approach these things with boldness. And the way we can do that is by abiding in the love and exuding the love and living in the love and living out the love. We love him because he first loved us. Love originates, Elohim is love. That means love emanates from, and it can be attributed to him. He is the source and the origin of love. And our love is just the righteous reciprocal response to the fact that he loves us. And the way to spot a phony is one who says, I love Elohim, but is in the process or activity of hating his fellow man. And this is a poor witness because, they can see the hatred that he has for his brother, but they cannot see the love of Yahweh in that. Verse 21, final verse of the 4th chapter. And we have this commandment from him, that the one loving Elohim should love his brother too. Why would he command us to love? Love should be a forced, it is not a coerced response. You cannot control or command anyone to love. You cannot force them by legislation to love, but he does call us and command us to love. And the way we prove and demonstrate the sincerity of our love is our ability to love our brother, our fellow man. These are people made in God's image, so how we treat them is in some measure a reflection of how we treat the one in whose image they reflect. First verse, 5th chapter, lesson itself. Everyone who believes that Yahshua Messiah has been born of Elohim, and everyone who loves the one bringing forth also loves the one who has been born of him. This is the concept of being born again or heavenly adoption, and we read that love is everyone who loves has been born of Elohim. So another measure, a manifestation of this principle in action is faith. So faith and love are central to our adoption and belonging and being born again. And this is proof that we belong. We are his sheep. He is our shepherd. He is also our heavenly Father in a more intimate sense than he once was before we had been born again through love and faith into his family. But the reflection, how we treat the Son, is the most accurate reflection of how we treat the Father, because the Son came to reveal and manifest and just display in unveiled radiance. Just his attributes were somewhat suspended and compromised in the incarnation, but he was still God, and the fact that you could kill him meant that you would kill God if it was literally possible. So they thought they killed him, but he was eternally alive, and he was resurrected on the third day, and he was in the beginning before the beginning. You cannot kill him. They thought they did. By this we know that we love the children of Elohim, when we love Yahweh and keep his commandments. Obedience is an expression of love, because the things that he commands us to do are difficult to do, but we can prove our love by forsaking our own interest or wants or needs or desires and just focusing on what his will is. And one of the ways that we can seek his will out for just the guidance and direction of our life is in prayer. But our daily day, what his will is, are known to us through what he commands us. So I recommend reading the Old Testament law. That's something Christians should know. They are not bound by it, and the curse and penalty was already paid and satisfied, but we still have to study these things too, because they are a reflection and an expression and a revelation of what his will is for us. And we can prove our love by obeying him in spite of the consequences and regardless of the obstacles or circumstances. Remember, he commands us to do anything is an act of love, and he wants the very best for us, so he demands the very best from us, and rightly so. For this is the love for Yahweh, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not heavy. His commandments are heavy to the natural man. The natural man resists the notion. They are instinctively rebellious to any external force telling them what to do and what not to do. They don't like obeying commandments. They fancy themselves the master of their own destiny, the God of their own private universe, the center of the end-all be-all of existence, but they are not heavy to one who has been born again and washed anew and made pure through his blood and his baptism, which are going to be central to the Trinitarian witness which awaits us. 6th verse, we're in the 4th verse now. Because everyone having been born of Elohim overcomes the world, and this is the overcoming that overcomes the world, our faith. He speaks of this earlier in the part we didn't review of the 4th chapter, but the concept of overcoming is central throughout the writings of John. He calls all the 7 churches in the book of Revelation to be overcomers. He speaks of the one who overcame the world, John 16:33. He records him as saying that, and we can become overcomers in him. Once we're born again and adopted, then his victory becomes our victory. The victory is already finalized on the cross. The only thing we need to do is maintain the integrity of the initiative which prompted us on this new life we embarked on. But we can become more than conquerors and more than overcomers. But faith is the key, which unleashes and unlocks the overcoming potential in reality. Who is the one who overcomes the world but he who believes that Yahshua is the Son of Yahweh? The world is one of our enemies, and the world is determined to kill us, defeat us, persecute us, abuse us, malign us, ruin our reputations, just totally destroy us. So the world is not a friendly place to people like us. And you can do no evil lest no evil be spoken about you, but they'll make stuff up about you. That's just the way of the world. But we can overcome the world by our confession and our faith that Yahweh loved us enough to send us his own son to provide us with the light. He was the light of the world who guides us and paved the path to our heavenly homeland. And he wrote the code for us, and he wrote it with his own blood. This is the one that came by water and blood, Yahshua Messiah, not only by water, but by water and blood. And it is the Ruah who bears witness, because the Ruah is the truth. Now, before we read the 6th through 8, we already read the 6th, but before we, the range of the 6th through 8th verse does demand somewhat of a preamble of itself. This portion is not unique to the original manuscript. It was inserted sometime in the 2nd century, and for two reasons, one of which was the doctrine of the Trinity was gaining currency. That term is not used or explicitly referenced in the New Testament itself, but the absence of the terminology does not belittle the reality of the concept. But this is not, whoever wrote this was not John, or even in his community at his time. There is some scholarly dispute as to who wrote the epistles in Book of Revelation and Book of John. A lot of them don't think it was him personally, but he is still nevertheless the creative genius who inspired much of the vocabulary and concepts that are just so unique. But so the Trinitarian witness was one, and the second one was the nature of the rise of the heresy of Gnosticism. By the 2nd century, this had sophisticated into a systematic heresy. It was just getting started in the apostolic age, and the nature of it was this impious imagining imposed by Neoplatonic Greek thought. It was an unholy admixture of worldly and pagan superstition. Neoplatonism stipulated that all matter was intrinsically and inherently bad, all spirit was inherently intrinsically good, ergo the incarnation was an illusion. It was only a trick on the senses. So the Docetists, who were the pioneering avatars and progenitors of what became Gnosticism, that is etymologically derived from the Greek term doses, which means to seem. So they suggested he only seemed because the illusion of that he played on the senses, because all spirit is good, he only seemed to be a body. So this belittles the sacrifice that he made on the cross. There are devastating ramifications behind this heresy. Heresy is not harmless. There are destructive ramifications of this. And Gnosticism sort of sophisticated. Now this, the teaching that can be attributed to Cerinthius, who I earlier identified erroneously as a contemporary of John. He was born around the year 100. John died not long after, so they were close but not quite contemporaries. He had the idea, as he stipulated it, that the Christ descended on the human Jesus, and then he departed from him before the cross. So the Christ remained alive, but Jesus was crucified and he died. So there were destructive things, and so he's motivated by, whoever wrote this was not John. Nevertheless, we do not dispute its inspired quality. But what he's trying to say, remember, is to have a Trinitarian witness, and he delves on this more fully as we read on. But why don't we read the 6th verse in review? But the other thing is this refutation of the heresy that was promoted by Cerinthius specifically. This is the one that came by water and blood, Yahshua Messiah, not only by water, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit who bears witness, because the Spirit is the truth. So coming by water, this is a reference to his baptism. The water had a definite location. It was in the river Jordan. And that was the water with which he was baptized. In the blood, so start to finish, he was an authentic Messiah, and the fact that he was baptized and he was crucified testifies to this profoundly and powerfully. He was baptized in the Jordan River. He was crucified on the cross at Calvary, the hill outside of Jerusalem, somewhere to the east. on what has become to be known as Good Friday, though it was an unspeakable evil. But the other witness is the Spirit. So the Spirit is the Spirit of truth. This much is known. He is introduced as such in the Gospel of John, somewhere in the upper room discourse. So he ministers to the head. He is the Spirit of truth, and he also is the comforter or advocate, the Greek parakletos, who ministers to the heart. And he bears witness that of the authenticity and legitimacy of his messianic identity. So these three, the fact that there are three was designed to lend credence to the Trinitarian theory. But, three witnesses also could commensurate with the Old Testament principle. Because there are three who bear witnesses in a Jewish tribunal to bring an accusation against anyone for doing anything without a supplementary witness would have not been accepted or admitted into court. And it was better to have three to bear witness of the atrocity which you were accusing on. This prevented any maliciously motivated people from slinging slanderous and libelous accusations against enemies. So this principle, but the three here are the witness, and he completes the sentence in the next verse. The Spirit and the water and the blood, and these three are in agreement. So there's no dispute, controversy, or disagreement, or resistance, or opposition between these three. The Spirit, the water, and the blood, they are presented in the order of the water and the blood and the Spirit. In the 6th verse here, they are presented in the order of the Spirit and the water and the blood. And the Spirit was there. He descended on him at the rivers of Jordan when he was baptized in the form of a dove, and the Father spoke in heaven. That was also a witness, authentic to the original writing of Matthew, of the Trinity in action. They just hadn't called it that quite yet. But the blood, once more, is central to the price that he paid, and to belittle the fact that it was actual blood and that he actually suffered and actually went through exquisite agony and pain is to belittle our salvation. And we don't want to be in disagreement with the three that bear witness to his divinity, because he is our ticket to heaven. If we receive the witness of men, the witness of Elohim is greater, because this is the witness of Yahweh, which he has witnessed concerning his Son. So in the 5th chapter in John's Gospel, the Messiah is testifying of his messianic authority, and he summons three witnesses: John the Baptist, the one who point the way and pave the path for him; the Father in heaven, the one whose hand enabled his miracles; and the Scriptures, John 5:39. You search the Scriptures. But the three is once more... says, these three witnesses are more than mere men that he refers to in this specific context, the 5th chapter of the 1st epistle. It is something substantially, spiritually greater than any witness. Any witness of divinity is substantially more significant than any witness of humanity, self-evidently. And the witness that they have about the Son of Yahweh is not of their own making, and it's not of their own imagining, but it's something that has been revealed to them from the Father through the Son to them for our benefit. 10th and final verse, we're going to cut this one short and save the second half for a day when we have more time. The one who believes is the Son of Yahweh has the witness in himself. The one who does not believe Yahweh has made him a liar, because he has not believed the witness that Yahweh has given concerning his Son. He gave the witness, but we should not belittle the fact of the giving. It came at great personal price, tremendous personal price to his own self. So this gift is not to be treated trivially, is not to be disrespected, demeaned, degraded, just spoken ill of, or blasphemed in any way, shape, and form. So this witness is central to, it is controversial, yet central to our claim. A lot of people struggle with the fact that divinity and humanity could be combined and conjoined in a single person who walked the earth and only appeared to be a man, but was actually divine. So that is a leap of faith for a lot of people, that one we take not blindly. We have the witness, and we have the witness of the Spirit, we have the witness of the Scriptures, and this is something you have to figure out for yourself. Because if you do not accept this belief, then that is something you need to pray for, because it's absolutely essential and foundational to your eternal destiny and your security therein. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.